Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before we jump into anything, we have English, French, and Spanish interpretations today. To access the interpretation channel, you can go down below at the globe icon and select the language of your choice. I will pass the floor to our Spanish interpreter so that they can make the same announcement in Spanish. Over to you. Maria, are you able to hear us?
Would you
No
like
worries.
me to provide the instructions right now?
Yes, thank you.
Ok, thank you. Buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches. Mi nombre es María Angélica, mis pronombres son ella y ella, y hoy estaremos proveyendo interpretación en español y en inglés. Si ustedes quieren participar en español y están conectando desde un computador, por favor toquen el globo abajo que dice interpretación y eligen español. Si están utilizando un computador o tableta, por favor toquen los 3 puntos abajo a la derecha que dicen más, eligen interpretación, español y arriba a la derecha tocan finalizado. Si tienen alguna pregunta o dificultad con la interpretación, por favor déjenoslo saber y con gusto les apoyaremos. Y también las instrucciones están en el chat. Y ahora I pass the mic to our French interpretation colleagues. Gracias.
Thank you. And Marjorie, would you like to make this, or Wenla, would you like to make the same announcement in French? You're on mute in case you're speaking, Wenla. Marjorie, would one of you like to come on the floor and make the interpretation announcement in French? No worries. We can circle back to this in the Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Marjorie, and apologies for the mistake. Welcome everyone to our annual webinar on VNRs. Voluntary National Reviews is one of the areas the Women's Major Group engages in very deeply, and we are very excited to have some incredible speakers today who have participated in the processes, who have been leading them, steering them, and we have members from both civil society and the UN. So we hope you can find the webinar helpful, and we will dig a little bit deeper into this. But before that, some quick safety guidelines. This is a safe space, and we request that you be mindful of all the diverse and intersectional identities that we have here in the room. In case there are any safety concerns and that you may have, you can reach out to me or you can reach out to my colleague Shehnaz, and we can take it from there. We also request you to introduce yourself in the chat. Please do feel free to use it to ask questions and answers. And we also request that we will also be having a dedicated question and answer session towards the end of the session. Now, without much ado, I'm going to pass on the floor to our moderator of the day, Valentina. Valentina is the president of Gender Central Moldova, and she also is the Women's Major Group Europe and Central Asia co-organizing partner. Valentina, please take the floor. All over to you.
Thank you, Majid. Thank you, Shehnaz. Greetings, everyone. And today we are very happy to be joined by so many feminist and women's rights activists from the world for today's session. The Women's Major Group is an intersectional global feminist collective created at the 1992 Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and an official participant in the UN nation processes and sustainable development. The Women's Major Group has a responsibility to facilitate feminist and women's rights civil society organizations' active participation, information sharing, and input into the policy space provided by the United Nations. The Women's Major Group is self-organized and open to all interested organizations working to promote human rights-based sustainable development, which focus on women's human rights, the women's empowerment, and gender equality. As we pass the midpoint of SDG implementation, reaching the SDG is even farther than before, which ACMS calculating data, we establish that we should react the SDG faster. We should react more strong due to the fact that in our context, actual context, we can implement SDG only for 2016-5. In this context, we need strong steps, more ambitious, and the realization that transformative change is more urgent than ever. One of the primary work area for the Women's Major Group and its members is the voluntary national review that takes place each year at the high-level political forum and recently in some of the regional sustainable development forums as a main monitoring and review tool for the achievement of the Agenda 2030. The 2024 high-level political forum will address the subject, reinforcing the 2030 agenda and eradicating poverty in times of multiple crises, the effective delivery of sustainable, resilient, and innovative solutions. And 44 member states will be presenting the VNR the next year. Today, we will hear two testimonies from the two Women's Major Group activists from the Global South. Those countries presenting the VNR in 2033. We will also hear of the preparation in Nepal, led by our member Beyond Beijing Committee for Nepal VNR in the next year. We will hear about the method major groups and other stakeholder coordination mechanisms will follow up for the next year. For many webinars that we plan. And we'll finish the discussion with information from the intergovernmental support unit from UNDESA on how the preparation for the next year VNRs will happen from the UN side. I would like to address the following question for our discussion today. What is SDG architecture in your country? And how has it been inclusive or not for civil society engagement? What were your feminist demands? How did the VNR process both during LGPF 2023 and the following in your country took place? What are some observations and best practices you can share with us? I would like to invite my colleagues to start this discussion, but also encourage our participants to contribute in order to have a more effective and efficient discussion today. And at the beginning, I would like to invite our first speaker, my sister Emily Ennis from Fiji Women's Rights Movement. Emily, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Valentina. Thank you for that opening. Maybe I could just ask Shanaz or maybe Maitri to share my PowerPoint as we go through this.
Doing now.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I'll keep my presentation short. My name is Emily Anisim Bautani. I am the team leader for the Intergenerational Women's Leadership Program at the Fiji Women's Rights Movement. I will discuss more about the organization. And yeah, hopefully you'll have some insight and some learnings. And I'm happy to share and speak on the questions that Valentina emphasized on at the beginning. Next slide, please. So this is just an outline of what I'll be sharing. I'll keep it simple, keep it short. It's actually 1 a.m. here in Fiji right now. So I'll just go through it shortly. I'll share about the organization that I'm representing, the Fiji Women's Rights Movement, and also the architecture in which the SDGs function here in Fiji. Fiji is a very small country, and how we mobilized for feminist demands and experiences from the HLPF earlier this year. Next slide, please. So if you're wondering where Fiji is, we're in the Pacific. And if you're wondering where the Pacific is, that's a map right there showing where the Pacific is. The Pacific Ocean, you know the Pacific Ocean. If you do not know the Pacific Ocean, you should be worried. So you can see the little Pacific Island countries that are there. We are small inland mass, but big in the oceans that we govern. Next slide, please. So the Fiji Women's Rights Movement. The Fiji Women's Rights Movement is the Pacific small islands developing the PCID's operating partner for the Women's Major Group. We were established back in 1986. You can see our vision there. We have this vision in our office. We're a feminist organization here in Fiji, and we are happily being the op for the Women's Major Group. Next slide, please. So I'll briefly share about the work that we do. The Fiji Women's Rights Movement is a multi-ethnic and multicultural non-governmental organization committed to removing discrimination against women through institutional reforms and attitudinal change. We do this through human rights approaches, through a feminist lensing, and we take a look at issues around good governance, leadership at all levels. We have leadership programs as well for women and girls and young women as well. We look at access to justice. We do research work, and all of this it contributes to the ongoing policy advocacy work that we do. Next slide, please. So the Fiji Women's Rights Movement operates under 4 pillars of work, one being democratization. This is basically the local to global human rights accountability work that we do, one being being part of the Women's Major Group. CSW, that's something that we also take part in annually. We have in the past contributed to the country's shadow reporting on the UPR as well, and CEDAW as well, and also on the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And in this presentation, I'll be talking more about how we mobilize for the VNRs. Next slide, please. So just moving on to the second pillar that we work under, it's under the institutional and structural policy transformation work that we do. So with the ongoing policy advocacy work that we do, we promote the policy and legislative reforms towards the realization of women's human rights and transforming structures that discriminate against women and girls. And I've mentioned the key areas of work that we work with, and all these strategies are key partnerships with national, regional, international organizations. So we look at partnering with our Asia Pacific sisters, our global partners as well. That's why we are also part of the WMG work. Next slide, please. So we also take on an intergenerational approach in the work that we do, and that sits under the third pillar that the Fiji Women's Rights Movement works with. So we work with girls, adolescent girls, we work with young women, we work with aging women as well, because we believe that at every point, a woman or a girl or young woman faces challenges different to each other. And that's a learning step that we take, where the girls share their lived experiences. It's an intersectional approach to substantiating the ongoing policy work that we do and promoting leadership at all levels. Thank you. Next slide, please. And of course, the fourth one is around organizational strengthening. This sits well with how we sustain the work that we do, with the ongoing fundraising, with the visibility work that we do as well. Next slide, please. So I kept that very simple and short with the work that we do as an organization, because I really wanted to get to the point, to our work around the VNRs. So Fiji, being a small country, the first time that Fiji reported was back in 2019. Back in 2019, there was a CSO architecture included. A Fiji CSO Voluntary Review Task Force existed back then. This task force existed of feminist groups, women's groups, faith-based groups, right-based groups with children's groups. I think we had SAVE as well, and most of these groups were at national level. We even had private and trade unions as part of this CSO Voluntary Review Task Force. You can see the picture there. There's a picture from back in 2019. And for us as women's groups, we work with Diva for Equality as well to produce our feminist demands back then. Now, the thing back then was, while we had the CSO architecture, there was no opportunity to engage with the state back then. And back then, with the VNR submission that we did as part of the WMG, we called out government that we needed a CSO space to engage with the state, to directly input into the reporting and also hold them accountable at the national level before we go into the global space. Next slide, please. Now, while that was our first reporting, in 2023, we had the opportunity to then be included in the work that the state did. Just for context, Fiji was under the rule of the same government for about 16 years. So in 2022, late 2022, we had a new government come in. And when the new government came in, opportunities opened up for us to engage with this government. And so it coincided with the 2023, this year's VNR reporting, and they had a mechanism where CSOs could engage directly, inputting into the report. So that was a direct outcome, positive outcome from the 2019 VNR. And the Fiji Women's Rights Movement was part of this process. And while we were part of this process, we also saw that CSO architecture that was in place back in 2019 collapse or disappear. I would say disappeared. With FWRM working towards 2023 HLPF, trying to come up with a feminist demands, trying to mobilize at the national and local level. We looked around with our partners that were with us back in 2019, and most of them said that it's not a priority for us this year. We're okay with this government. Maybe you go ahead and drive it, and we'll just input into the statement. So FWRM being FWRM, we continue doing the work that we do, holding government accountable, and we drafted our priorities. And but one thing I wanted to share is with this engagement with the government through the CSO mechanism, we saw that there was a disconnect with local CSOs, where local CSOs were not aware of how SDGs worked, how they were monitored as well on the ground. And there was also a disconnect with how the government was monitoring our progress towards SDGs and how they weren't using local data to source their report. Next slide, please. Now, at HLPF 2023, we were still able to mobilize with the Asia Pacific Women's Reporting Mechanism. I think I work closely with Rina from APWLD on this. She helped me draft the statement, and as well, while we tried to bring in other women's groups, like I said, they were just competing priorities. Most of them thought that we've got a new government, all's okay. But that didn't deter us. We still called on, we looked at data sets that were available, and we still called on government to take a look at the progress towards the SDGs, especially around SDG 5. We called for government to improve status of access to water and sanitation for women and girls, a basic need. Fiji released their multiple indicator cluster survey back in 2021, and it indicated that there was a regress with this water access to water for a country surrounded by water. There was a regress with women and girls access to water, and obviously this had a direct correlation to women and girls sanitation during managing their menstrual health. So that was one of our feminist demands that we had at the HLPF. And also we asked the government how exactly were they monitoring progress, what data sets were they using, what indicators were they using, were they localizing indicators, contextualizing that, because we know that there were data sets that were now being available, and we were still seeing the disconnect with how government was managing data sets coming out from the ministries and the VNR report.
Emily, if you can provide the conclusions, please.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So to keep it short, what worked well was the relationship we had with government, and also connecting with our intergovernmental body. It's called the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat. That worked well for me because I get to also start talks with the upcoming VNRs for the Pacific Island countries this year. Next slide, please. So what's next? Like mentioned, it's a following up with the state on our questions because they haven't come back with an answer on that. And also keep in touch with the intergovernmental bodies on how to track PCED's VNRs upcoming 2014, and just reviving the local women's VNR task force group. Thank you. I think I'm done.
Okay. Thank you very much, Emily, for valuable information. It's really powerful information for other NGOs. And also the next speaker, Andrea Rusu, my dear, Andrea is from Romania. She is Executive Director, Center Filia, and she presented their statement and their report in the frame of different sessions during the LGPF 2033. Please provide your experience. Thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, Valentina, and thank you all for having me today here. So I will try to be as brief as possible. As a short context, as Valentina said, I'm from Romania, which is in Eastern Europe. We are neighboring Moldova, Hungary, Bulgaria, Ukraine, and Serbia. I am the representative of Filia Center, which is one of the oldest and biggest feminist NGO in Romania at the moment. We are 24 years old. which is fairly old for a democracy that's around 34 years old. So yeah, this is the short context. I would like to respond very briefly to the questions that were addressed earlier. First of all, if I'm thinking about the SDG architecture in Romania and how inclusive it have been, in short, it was not inclusive at all. The long response would be that unfortunately, even if the feminist movement is fairly big in Romania, but very active, we have not been part of the process for the voluntary national report that Romania has done. We are not invited on a regular basis to meetings to assess, evaluate, and speak about the SDGs. Not even about the gender equality SDG. For us, the experience was that we were invited by the women's major group, and before this, we had conversations with UN officials more than we did with the national authorities. In Romania, the Department for Sustainable Development, which is under the Prime Minister of Romania, is the department that evaluates and implements the SDGs. But again, usually the way that they are consulting civil society is mostly through civil society organizations that are more comfortable for the government, meaning organizations that have political people and party members involved in them. So for us, it was a new experience. It was the first time I went to New York for the UN. It was pretty, I would say, somehow exhausting and complicated, but at the same time very enriching. I had a lot of experience, and I left with a lot of information that I'm still using today in our work. Before we got there, we submitted the statement from Romanian civil society organizations. I tried to involve as many organizations as possible relating to human rights. So we sent the statement and asked for input from the LGBTI plus organizations in Romania, from Roma organizations in Romania, which is a very important and vulnerable community in Romania. And we tried to have all the opinions gathered there. Our biggest demands were in part, of course, opening the consultations from the government to the civil society actors regarding SDG implementation. But we also asked for the introduction of intersectional discrimination, which we don't have as a type of specific discrimination in Romania, unfortunately. And we discussed, because these are the topics that Filia works in, we discussed about sexual reproductive health and rights, access to on-demand abortion, and the possibility of having free on-demand abortion in Romania, as well as gender-based violence, prevention mechanisms, but also the budgeting of services for survivors. So I would say these were the biggest feminist demands that we had there. And it was also a very important topic was the data gathering. I saw also in the last presentation something about this as well. So unfortunately, the Romanian authorities are not collecting disaggregated data on gender, ethnicity, age, and anything in between with regards to sexual abuse and other types of human rights violations. So this was very important for us. Regarding how the VNR went there and what happened after, I would say that again, coming from a country where the civil society organizations are not were not involved in the drafting of the VNR by the Romanian authorities, it felt like they were very surprised when they saw me there. It was pretty clear that they were not expecting anyone from the civil society besides the delegation that they decided to be there. So it came a bit as a shock, even though I wrote to them prior to arriving at New York. I wrote to the Department of Sustainable Development, to the Romanian Embassy at the UN, and asked for meetings. They were all open to meet me, and of course the delegation from the Women's Major Group. The meetings went quite well. I think they were mostly open to, I would say they were curious about how I got there, what exactly is the situation, and somehow the Romanian authorities are always very, and I think this is the case in many other countries, they are keen to look good in front of other countries. So they were open to learning more and hearing best practices and trying to make at the end of the day a good image after presenting the VNR. I arranged these advocacy meetings there. They went quite well. After the HLPF, when I came back to Romania, I wrote multiple emails to the responsibles from the Department for Sustainable Development. Unfortunately, our work is not very we are not collaborating very well. I mean, we are in contact now, which we weren't before the HLPF, but at the same time, the feeling is that now that they are done with the VNR, they can just forget about the SDGs for the next 2 years, and maybe after this, for the future 2 years, they will work on the sustainable development goals. But however, I am way more comfortable with the UN instruments after going there. I am using the SDGs, the targets, the strategy that Romania has for sustainable development more in our advocacy work at the national level, in order to push for modifications. When we have meetings with embassies in Romania and with politicians, I refer to the UN sustainable development goals, but also again to what Romania said that they would do. So, and I really feel like this is helping to push for modifications on gender equality in Romania. So this would be my experience, but I'm here for any questions.
Thank you so much, Andrea, for valuable information. It was really very interesting. I know you had very interesting experience during LGPF, the current year, but it's very important to present all these inputs to our colleague in order to have more information and whole picture of all processes. And now I would like to offer the floor to Kalpana Rai, Advocacy and Campaign Officer Beyond Beijing Committee in Nepal. And I would like to address my questions. My dear, tell us please how your organization is preparing for the process for VNR for the next year. And we know that there is strong SDG platform in Nepal. Can you share with us information on how you engage with them as well? And what are your plans from now and until LGPF for the next year and beyond for this VNR? You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would just like to share my presentation, so I'm trying here. Please give me a minute. Okay, so can you all see my presentation here?
Yes, it's working.
Okay, I hope I'm audible as well. So, hello everyone. Thank you for this opportunity, and I'm really glad to be here and part of this event. Uh, so, to respond on your question, I would like to share my experience and insights through my brief presentation here. And for the first question, I would like to share that share about briefly about Beyond Beijing Committee Nepal, and that Beyond Beijing Committee Nepal is a feminist national network organization established after the Beijing Conference in 1995. And we have more than 230 plus grassroots women-led organizations as members, and we have been working at local to national level on gender equality, SDGs, and women's human rights. And we also have been advocating for gender mainstreaming in all 17 goals of the SDGs. And we have been working in close collaboration with CSOs, allies, and government bodies such as National Women Commission, National Planning Commission, and Ministry of Women. And BBC Nepal, we are also actively engaged in the process of SDGs from its inception. And talking about voluntary national reviews, Nepal has so far participated in two VNRs, which were in 2017 and 2020. And Nepal is also going to take part for the third VNR in 2024. And as Beyond Beijing Committee is convening the Women Major Group for Sustainable Development in Nepal, which is also known as WMGSTN. And we are also convening Women and Girls Constituency for Gender Justice theme. We were engaged in both previous VNR and HLPF during 2017 and 2020, and we also published national voluntary national review from women CSO's perspective, and we handed over those reports to our government bodies. And for 2024, we are also planning for Women CSO's national review. And we will also planning to engage in the regional reviews such as APFST, Youth Forum, and CSO Forum, and global forums such as in HLPF. And so here is the glimpse of our work that we have done in previous VNR in 2017 and 2020. We had organized various consultations at provincial level and as well as national level, and we produced country report from the women's CSO's perspective during 2020 VNR and submitted it to the government. And we also participated in both high level political forum in 2017 and 2020. And talking about STG platform in Nepal, we have National Planning Commission from the government side, which is also known as the apex body for the STG implementation and planning at the country level. And the NPC had conducted CSO consultation in 2020 for voluntary national review process, in which BBC contributed in gender equality. And from CSO's level, we have Nepal STG Forum, which is also known as NSTGF, and it is a loose network, CSO's network, which implement, review, and monitor all the 17 goals of this and STG process, and also it gets engaged in the VNR processes with in close collaboration with government. And for this forum has different networks or organizations leading goal wise review and implementation at national level, where Beyond Beijing Committee is leading goal 5 on gender equality, and it also contributes on the CSS report publication and disseminating it among CSOs and government bodies every year. And this year also we had produced CSO's report. So here is the Nepal Civil Society report on SDGs 2023, in which we had collaborated with Nepal SDG Forum and NGO Federation of Nepal, which is the secretariat of Nepal SDG Forum. And under that Nepal SDG Forum, BBC is convening a gender equality theme. And we had contributed on the gender equality part in this report, and we had submitted this report in September through to the Nepal
Kalpana, I'm afraid you might be frozen. Maichi, can I ask her help? Are you able to hear Kalpana, or is it just frozen for me?
No, I believe she's frozen.
Then maybe let's remove the spotlight. Let's see if that will help. Kalpana, are you able to hear us? Okay, there might be, we know that weather events are ongoing in Kalpana's geography, I think. So maybe we can move on to our next speaker, but when Kalpana comes back, we can listen to the rest of her presentation just for time's sake. And I am also sorry to say that Valentina had to, our moderator, dear Valentina, had to leave for an emergent appointment. So I will try to support as much as possible the rest of the moderation. Let me see if I can. Yes, I can. Maichi, would it be possible for you to screen share our regular PowerPoint?
Absolutely.
That will, thank you. And then once Kalpana comes back, we can definitely listen more to her. We wanted to basically bring you the list of countries that are going to do their VNR presentations. As mentioned, in 2024, 44 countries will be there doing their voluntary national reviews. If I'm not mistaken, and you and Dessa can correct me if I am, as far as I know, the list is closed for 2024. But if your country isn't among these member states, you can definitely advocate at the national level to get your country to sign up for a voluntary national review in 2025 and beyond. You can also, we'll be sharing this presentation, so you can also look at the countries and click on them. There's extensive information on the previous VNRs of some of these countries if they have done so already. And we will be addressing we will be addressing the CSO interventions during the voluntary rational reviews. And thank you so much for confirming, Yop, that 2024 list is closed. I hear that Kalpana is back. Kalpana, are you able to come back to finish your presentation?
Hi, Sainaz. Yes,
Yes.
where I was cut off?
I believe in the national, I will tell you the slide number. Maybe
Okay.
just one slide before where you think you cut off.
Okay, maybe I would just share the last slide, okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so like I already shared that we have been engaging in the national consultations organized by both CSOs and National Planning Commission, the government level. And I would like to share here our plans for HLPF 2024 and the VNR cycle. Like in previous year's VNR. This year also, BBC Nepal is planning to engage in the VNR cycle by organizing local, provincial, and national consultations with women CSOs, including women in all their diversity. And we are also planning to gather status and recommendations to advocate with government bodies for putting gender equality and women in all the diversity at the priority of SDGs planning, implementation, review, and monitoring. Likewise, we will continue to engage and amplify grassroots women CSOs' voices for the availability of gender disaggregated data and investing in women and girls in both regional and global SDG
Kalpana,
spaces in
um,
2024 and
Kalpana,
beyond.
I'm so sorry
Yes.
to cut you midway like this. Could you go a little slower for our interpreters, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
So I already shared that we will be engaging in both regional STG spaces such as APFST and HLPF, the global STG space. And we will be engaging and amplifying grassroots women CSOs' voices for the availability of gender disaggregated data and investing in women and girls prioritizing women and girls' need. So that's all our plan for HLPF 2024 and VNR cycle. So I would just like to end here my presentation. If there are any questions or queries, I would love to respond. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kalpana. It has been wonderful to actually hear kind of this ongoing work throughout the years that is supporting and building up to the VNRs for 2024. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. Meiji, if I could kindly ask the Canva slides again, because we wanted to highlight one of the paragraphs from the outcome document of the SDG Summit that we believe, and some other thinkers like SVP believes that can be helpful and influential for your VNRs. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So you will see that in the political declaration, which was the outcome of the SDG Summit this year, which was adopted at the SDG Summit by the General Assembly, there is a paragraph that specifically mentions we, meaning the member states, will continue to integrate the SDGs into our national policy frameworks and develop national plans for transformative and accelerated action. We will make implementing the 2030 Agenda and achieving the SDGs a central focus in national planning and oversight mechanisms. We will further localize the SDGs and advance integrated planning and implementation at the local levels. We encourage all relevant actors to better address interlinkages, synergies, and trade-offs between the Sustainable Development Goals, enhancing policy coherence for sustainable development. Why this paragraph is highlighted in regards to VNRs is that we know that many countries have actually had national SDG action plans, but some are still developing and working on their own, and for some, this is actually a very concrete commitment to have this interlinkage between the 2030 Agenda and the national level work they're doing in accordingly. So please look into your country's relevant ministries' websites, look to see what is the current situation with the National Action Plan for SDG implementation in your country, and that can provide you a good kind of baseline to also build up on and off your VNR reports. An additional point is that, as you have heard from our previous speakers who have been through this in 2023, they are also working in different UN treaty bodies and processes, and they're utilizing those reports for building up their VNR reports as well. So these two issues we just wanted to highlight in case they're helpful. We can go to the next slide, Maitri. Thank you. So without further ado, we will move from the national and local level and take a step to the global level, where we will first hear from Mabel Bianco, the president and founder of FAME, who is also the Major Groups and the Stakeholders Coordination Mechanism co-chair, on the preparations at the global level from the civil society perspective. Yes, and then I can give the floor to other speakers. Mabel, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can listen to me. I'm very happy to have this possibility to share with you how, through the coordination mechanism of the major groups and other stakeholders, we are working on the preparation for the VNRs and supporting the civil society participation. As you know, for the women mayor group, since the beginning, we were very interested to have the women's groups meaningful participation, as we have been saying. But the problem is not so easy. Through the mayor groups and other stakeholders, the task group prepared and started to work, inviting all civil society. Uh, so we are helping as Women Mayor Group, bringing names and inviting our colleagues in the countries where the biennales are going to be. Through this, what we want is that the Women's Mayor Group, all our members, meanwhile, they are not in the Women Mayor Group, but they are feminists and they are having work at national level, could be included in this big group of civil society from each country, in which they are going to prepare for the presentation of the civil society when the BNR from this country is going to be presented. As you know, it's very unfair, the situation, because we have 2 minutes to express all the civil society challenges and interests. So with this work in the preparation that start traditionally in December, so is having 6 months of work together, we are trying to put together what everybody wants to request, to present, to ask the government, and started to mobilize the groups in order to discuss and prioritize. And of course, naturally, then they need to select who is going to read that and present that questions. One of the problems we have is that we traditionally try that the people who make the questions are in person there in the high level political forum. But we need to understand that not always all of them could be there. So we also have the possibility to allow some of the people from their country or from outside the UN to present it. But the problem in those cases is that we need to have some people behind if it's any problem with this connection, in order not to lose the possibility to participate in these 2 minutes. The other point is that, of course, the people, we need to wait till the end when all the countries and the governments make their questions and appointments. So we are the less. And sometimes the time is not anymore, it's very short. So meanwhile, there have been some efforts to increase the time allowed to each country. The number of countries that are presenting is so big this year. Next year is going to be 44 countries. So it's not possible to make a long time allowed. So this is something also we need to say. The other issue is that sometimes the governments decided to present a video, and the video is not the same in a way to make questions, but is necessary. They have the right, so it's okay. So what we push is, first of all, to start early, to be related to the government, to know how they are doing, and if they need to be related to the civil society. But the problem is not all of them are mobilizing the civil society and including them. So we need to push them to do. And the women's groups, specifically those not in the capitals and not sometimes far away from the capital, we need to push more hard to be there and not to be obliged. So this is something that we want to let you know. Second, we need you to be ready to bring some information in numbers. We know that that the numbers or the indicators are not often access to have these available for the civil society. But we need to continue pushing and requesting the government. If they didn't, we need to denounce in that we couldn't do our analysis because we have no access to that. And I think UNDESA and I hope SHUP could help us how they are helping us, letting know and supporting the governments and bringing the information they need to share with the civil society the information they have, and they need to invite civil society previously. But this, as you know, is very difficult. The last point I want to say is that we need to take care and protect our people and our women, feminists, not to be harassed or damaged or persecuted because they participate and they say something. We are working with the UN high level, the human rights unit, but it's necessary that we understand that in some countries we need to protect very carefully our members. So to have not to bring the information, who they are, allowed to be presented by others because they are more safe, and specifically if they are not living in the country, so they are not going to be persecuted at the national level. So we need to take care. And this is a very important point that we are considering. And we have some problems before. Now we are better, but we never know. And also we need to have this consideration in mind. And the civil society in the countries need to also understand that sometimes they couldn't speak because they need to be support and not be able to be harassed or persecuted. I hope Nelia, that is our chief in the task force, can let know better about how is the plan for the next year. Is Nelia there?
Yes, Nelia is with us. Let me make her co-host because I think she wanted to share her screen as well. And we're very lucky that she had the time, because if you are going to work on the VNR reports for 2024, you'll get a lot of emails from Nelia, let me put it that way. So this is a great opportunity for you all to meet if you haven't already in this process. Nelia, the floor is yours.
Yes, I hope you can hear me. I am not officially confirmed, but anyway, I think I will be engaged one way or another in terms of Vienna processes. And because we also worked already for a while in this process, and I just probably I will start my intervention even with such kind of call and statement, because I really, if your country is Vienna country next year, I think that you really need to understand that this is your advocacy opportunity. And here I'm sharing a slide which actually we share usually with countries which I'm working more with. It's Eastern Europe and Caucasus, where we invite colleagues to engage in Vienna process as much as possible, and to share that you have multiple possibilities and opportunities actually to do advocacy work during this year. And and here for you, it's just an example. I also can drop it in the chat later as an image, this slide. We made such kind of timeline, basically telling about different possibilities for you to engage. You can engage with your government, and this is actually the time already to start to check who will be working on VNR, who is already working on VNR in your country. You can also work on a shadow report, and of course, Mabel already mentioned that we as civil society representative, but actually even a bigger range of stakeholders, have a possibility to engage during the official presentation of VNR during HLPF in July, but you can really do more than 2 minutes. You can also prepare a shadow report, form a coalition, and this is exactly what we heard already from colleagues from Nepal, that they have this multidisciplinary coalition. And probably what we also trying usually to ask people, maybe even during this 2 minutes, present your shadow report outcomes, or raise particular demands, or ask questions to your government. So this is definitely depends on the group, on your national group, which will be working on this statement. And if we just focus on this particular process for the statement, official statement preparation, which will be coordinated by major groups and other stakeholders, what Mabel mentioned about this magical 2 minutes, we will start registration this year, I believe in January. So we will create and share definitely with women's major group, as well as with all other major group, the form, which we will invite you to fill out as soon as possible, that we know that you are this person who wants to engage in the process of preparation of the statement. And then we will together go through the process of preparation of the statement, selection of the speaker. And we, I can tell you, experience in previous years, we are getting more actively engaged, usually after regional forums, because we also using this kind of platforms also to mobilize VNR country representatives there. And after regional forums, we usually start to organize already direct calls and discussions, how you can prepare the statement, how you can include different kind of groups. Of course, here I understand that this event is for women's major group, but at the same time, of course, we need to remember that we need to be inclusive. We need to include different kind of marginalized groups. And of course, in every country, it would be a really specific list. Like in one, I don't know, country, there are indigenous peoples, in another, maybe it's not such an important topic. So that's why it's really important to keep it in mind, to make this process open and diverse, and include as many stakeholders as possible. And in May, June, we usually ask our colleagues to finalize the statement, and especially select the person who will deliver the statement, because as Mabel already mentioned, that we have sometimes problems with bringing people to New York. Of course, it's also depending on a country, because I last year, for example, coordinated more European region, and of course, developed countries are not really eligible for funding opportunities. That's why we always encourage even people from all countries around the world to think about funding possibility, and especially also to think ahead about visa. So this is also something for you to think about right now, because in some countries what we face that sometimes waiting line for the visa application can be really long, and if you already think and consider joining HLPF in July, it would be my personal advice already to check. Unfortunately, this is the reality, to check if you need to apply for a visa and what is the procedure. And if you, for example, don't have invitation letter right now, but maybe you can already start with booking the appointment, because sometimes it's really, they are blocked for several months. So yeah, and of course, we are always happy to see our speakers in New York presenting the statements which were developed collaboratively together with different groups. We usually provide all possible support with finding the right spot where to sit, with any, I don't know, even mental and moral support sometimes. And I hope that this year it will be the same. It would be me or other colleagues who will be there to assist you as much as possible, that the most of the process will be done for you properly, in order that you can deliver your comments and statements. And what I also heard colleagues talking about, and here it's just also an advice that it's indeed true that sometimes countries neglect the process afterwards. And this is again where, I don't know, more like prepared policy papers or shadow reports can be useful, because then it's easier to follow up with this process with countries. And I know experiences from some countries that after official presentation, after HLPF, civil society groups met with the governments already at home and had a discussion how their recommendations, their comments can be implemented in the next years, in the next cycle before the next VNR reporting. And yeah, during the preparation process, we will basically support you as much as we can. I personally try to collect all previous statements from previous years, so you also should be able to reflect on what has been said before, what was the questions that were raised by civil society groups before, and to make maybe even a reflection, like, did something changed, or are the questions still the same? So yeah, and I don't know, Shehnas, let me know if I need to add something. And yeah, I just hope to see you all there, if you're from Vienna country, in the list of our active participants who are preparing next statements of 2024.
Thank you so much, Nalia. This has been amazing information, and I hope that it laid clearly how the process goes through. And now, last but not least, of course, we are going to Joop Tönnissen, Deputy Chief of Intergovernmental Policy and Review Branch of UNDESA. So he can share with us the preparations from the UN side. Thank you so much, Joop.
Yes, good morning. I hope you can hear me and you can see my PowerPoint as well. Thank you for having us, having me. I'm really happy to listen to all the previous speakers, because, you know, it makes it very easy for me to add on. I agree with everything that Mabel and Elia have mentioned in the last few sessions. Really also interested to hear the experiences from Fiji, Nepal and Romania, with whom we have worked at various levels in the last year. So let me just then, even though we are at the end, just give you a little bit of a perspective on the bigger picture from us, from the UN. I hope that my slide can continue. Give me a moment. I hope Let me see. How do I do that? Give me a minute. There you go. Yeah, okay. I think you can see it. Obviously, you know, the VNRs are a bit of a success. They're almost universal. There's just a few countries left that haven't presented a VNR so far. That is 9. After this year, we will have 6 because we have South Sudan, Yemen, and Iran who will present for the first time. What I just want to show here is also that now, since we're 7 or 8 years into this process, we have the majority of the countries have already presented more than one VNR. And I sometimes compare the group of countries as the Tour de France, where you see a lot of bicycle race riders close together. But we do have to make sure that no one stays behind. So when we were soliciting the group for 2024, we were obviously fixed on those that had only presented one report so far, and will present a second report this year. And we've had some success for that. I really don't know how I can get to the next slide. Bear with me. Okay. Can you see my next slide? Yeah.
It's coming, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So here we have the group of 44 for this year. It was presented already by Shanaz in a bit of a different format, but here we have split it out by region and also by the number of times that the countries have presented. And if you just look closely at this list, there's a couple of things I just want to highlight. We have a fairly high number of countries that are coming out of conflict, that are into some kind of conflict. Obviously, South Sudan, Yemen, we have Palestine, we have Libya. You know, there's a few other countries there. We actually had Israel as well, but they withdrew a few weeks ago. So that is one aspect that really comes to mind. Armenia, Azerbaijan. You know, you make your own assessment there. So that is really one aspect that is new. I guess that has an impact on civil society participation as well at a global level, I think. Then we have, of course, many countries from Africa presenting for the second time. We have 17 countries from Africa, and many of them are second timers and third timers as well. It's a fairly large group. And then the other thing that brings out is the fact that we have a fairly large number of small island development states from the Pacific. We have Micronesia, we have Palau, Samoa, Solomon Islands, and Vanuatu. And there's a few other small island development states there as well. Then very few Western European and other groups, only Austria, Spain from the EU, and that's it. So you can say this is more of a global South year than in other years. And well, finally, we have a good representation of Latin America and the Caribbean with 9 countries, including Brazil and Argentina and Mexico. So it is a very interesting and dynamic group. What will we do with them? As we do every year, we are there to support the countries. We usually have 3 global workshops. That's a little bit of the safe space for the focal points from the governments. And our first workshop will be in Addis Ababa in early December, for whom we are now actually waiting for nominations from the countries, not only of those who would come to Addis, but also focal points for the entire VNR process. And they have taken it slow. So we've only had about 10 or so countries that have told us who their focal points are. So they are off to a slow start, which is not good. It's middle of November now, and that's clearly not necessarily a good thing. Then, of course, usually in the spring, we have these regional workshops at the regional commissions at ESCAP, ECA, ECLAC, ESQA, ECE, and many of you are familiar with that. We have a synthesis report that we are basically just finalizing now, which is a synthesis of all the VNR reports from the previous years. We have the reporting guidelines, with which I will come back. Then, of course, in May every year, as the beginning of the final process, we present a synthesis of the main messages of the VNR reports. So that is also coming up then in April. And then we every year have a handbook, which we are updating every year. marginally. Now, on these guidelines, I just want to bring this up because paragraph 38S of the political declaration was mentioned by a few people, and that is very interesting. And I should tell you that in addition to this regular process that that's laid out here, there is also going to be a review of the HRPF as a whole, which of course includes the VNRs, and that is going to be led by the two co-facilitators that have been assigned by the President of the General Assembly. One is Guinea and the other one is Lithuania, the two ambassadors. Now that process is only starting in the spring of next year. So that means for all practical purposes that it will not affect the current cohort of VNRs, and that's going to perhaps have some impact on the 2025 presentations, but we are not expecting too much change there. Now, of course, that paragraph that you mentioned, national action plans, this is something that we have informally always recommended to VNR countries, and it makes perfect sense to include the VNR findings into the national action plans. But it is now good to have this in writing. So here you see a graphic representation of what I was just mentioning. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. So this is basically our timeline going through the HRPF in July. As I mentioned, these are these guidelines that we usually prepare for the presenting countries. Clearly, the aspect of leaving no one behind is essential there, and we will share this, of course, again with the current crop of 2024 countries. And you may think that by now countries are familiar with what is expected at the HRPF in terms of VNR reporting, but we have found that in many cases, including in countries that are presenting for a second or third time, government officials tend to have careers and tend to change. And we have found that really there's a lot of value in repeating the basics to them, because many of the individual government officials that work on VNRs in 1 year will no longer be there in the next time that a VNR is presented. So I just wanted to bring that very practical point up to you as well when you engage again for a second time in your
Participa
country.
nuevamente por segunda vez en su país.
I'm sorry, that's all that I have.
Et voilà tout
I'll
ce
be
que j'avais à
happy
dire.
to go into a discussion with you and answer any question that you may have. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. You really appreciate it. And apologies to everyone and to you as well. We had a slight technical confusion in the interpretation part. That's why we had the overlaps. But hopefully it is resolved now. Please let us know if you are not able to hear the interpretation or have problems accessing it. We have about 10 minutes left, and we have had some questions in chat. But would anyone like to kind of raise their hand, turn on their voice and share that with us, share their questions with us? One of the questions was, how can national civil society organizations be involved in the work of the Women's Major Group with regards to the VNR process? And we will, Maitri, if you could share our PowerPoint, it will be super helpful. You will be able to see that we have a link where you can become Women's Major Group members. Yes, thank you so much. You can become a Women's Major Group member there. We share information that we receive from UNDESA, from major groups and other stakeholders, and try to ensure that that information comes to you in a timely manner so you can engage with the global side of the process closely. For the regional side of the processes, for those regions that do look into VNRs like ECLAC, even in a kind of a more informal format, we can connect you with our regional organizing partners, and they would be able to support you in that process. In terms of the national level, you're always welcome to kind of look who else is in the women's major group if in your country any women's rights or feminist organizations have started this process, and we can also try to link you with them. Maitri is sharing with us our online learning tool for women's major group members that makes an introduction to both the SDG process, to the women's major group, and the related processes like HLPF and like BNRs that you has mentioned. Yes, I see one hand up. Fargana, please.
Hi, thank you so much. This is Farhana. I am from Musawa. It's an organization working on Muslim family law reform globally. We've been looking to intervene in the VNR process a bit more because we've done a lot of CEDAW engagement before. So we're doing sort of an assessment review on how useful it will really be to engage with the VNR process as well. So just so I understand correctly in terms of just interventions, there is no independent process for CSOs to formally intervene other than by engaging with the countries directly and then engaging with the UN through the countries. Am I understanding that correctly? Or is the shadow report process a bit separate? Just like, for example, for CEDAW, we submit the shadow report directly to the CEDAW committee and then they upload it on their website, and there's a formalized process around that. So just wanted to know in terms of physically engaging and speaking during the VNR process at HLPF and also in submitting shadow reports, is there a formalized process independent of the countries? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nelia, I can pass this on to you.
Yeah. So in terms of, first of all, in terms of shadow reports, unfortunately, and you also, I think, can confirm here, we don't have an official procedure, and unfortunately, I don't know if it will be possible again to discuss it during the HLPF reform, but so far we don't have any official process running for the shadow report that you can submit it as in other UN processes. But anyway, I just personally, knowing that I was also working with different countries, I still encourage civil society groups to prepare these reports because they still can be really useful advocacy tool, which we use at the side events, that we also at regional forums. There are lots of possibilities. You can use them during your national internal processes. It's at least if there are capacities to do a shadow report, it's never a mistake, I would say. So in terms of engagement processes, indeed, as also Mabel has mentioned, because we have such a limited possibility to intervene during the presentation, as I mentioned already, there are these 2 minutes. So that's why we really need to be organized and prepared. And this process, as we said, is run by major groups and other stakeholders. And this is exactly would be the point for you if you want to be part of the this intervention, if you want to suggest some particular issues to be included in this intervention, then of course this is exactly for you the momentum to get engaged. And this is when we will start this, as I mentioned, in January, collecting interest of people who want to be engaged in this process. So this is the official channel how basically you can raise your issues at the official platform. But at the same time, of course, again, as a civil society representative, I would say that it's an advocacy moment. You can find lots of other platforms around regional forums, around the HLPF, where we organize side events, official side events, and not even official side events, where we there is always more attention to VNR countries and also particular topics as SDGs under review. And I don't know if somebody mentioned it already, but next year it's SDG 1, no poverty, SDG 2, no hunger, SDG 13, climate action, SDG 16, which is peace, transparency, institutions, lots of questions under SDG 16, I think, which are important for civil society. And of course, SDG 17 partnerships is also under review. So this is also maybe something to keep in mind. I hope I cover, and I see that you maybe can also add
Thank you,
something.
Nelia. Yes, you please.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, of course. Again, supporting what Nelia's answer was on shadow reporting. Of course, there is no official mechanism, unfortunately, unlike CEDAW. But please don't let that stop you. There are other platforms, websites where you can post an accountability report, as some call it, or a shadow report. There's sdgaccountability.org. There's many ways on the internet that, in a way, it's a very democratic platform where you can post. And yes, so far they are not at the same level as CEDAW, unfortunately. Perhaps after next year it can. I'll be happy to talk to you how that can be realized. It would be quite an effort, I can imagine. Not every member state would be too happy about it, but it's something that to look forward to, because just like so much effort is being put into VNRs every year, not just by civil society, but by member states as well. These reports are there to stay, and they will be used 2 years on or 3 years on when the next presentation comes. Anyway, that's just my personal thought. I would really encourage that, and hopefully we can realize that. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may just
go ahead, Nelia.
For Joop's comment, Joop, we actually I just posted a link in the chat. We as MGOS started to collect all shadow reports and parallel reports on the mgos.org. It's good that you mentioned that I also remembered. So and we are trying to collect all the reports there. So again, for those who wants to make this report, it's another opportunity to make it publicly available, because we are trying really to make it as a database that maybe one day also can be shared even by the UN. I don't know. Let's dream high. So yeah, this is at least what we are trying to do with MGOS.
Thank you so much, Nelia, for bringing that. Sorry, my voice just came back to me. And this has been one of the main advocacy points during the last HLPF review we have had. So probably will be brought by the civil society this time around as well. Because we know that a lot of work is going into these alternative spotlight shadow reports, however you may call it, and they become really important information also for future reviews as well. And it would be good to see them recognized. Thank you. Any other questions? We are at time, but maybe if there's one more. Okay, if not, thank you all for your listening and interest in this process. Thanks to all our speakers for the incredible contributions. This was a very comprehensive, like 360 around information sharing on the VNRs. We hope it was helpful. As the Women's Major Group, we will continue to support our members, women's rights and feminist organizations in this process. Please don't ever hesitate to reach out to us. And we will share the recording on our YouTube, also in French, hopefully, and also in Spanish, perhaps, if we can manage technical aspects of it. Many thanks to our interpreters as well, who have patiently interpreted all the UN lingo. And thank you all so much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You bye bye.
Bye.